What are the most absurd COVID-19 guidelines that you recall from the past 3 years? Good morning, Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News and Talk. And we've got the COVID-19 pandemic. It's over. World Health Organization announcing that they are ending the global pandemic and what exactly that means for hospital reporting. We're hearing here in Illinois that they're no longer going to be reporting out COVID-19 case numbers, that practically every part of the state has a low level of transmission of COVID-19. Still some, public health warnings about, hey, some people might be more susceptible to COVID-19. But I'd like to hear from you as to what you think are some of the most ridiculous COVID-19 policies that were put in place. 217-629-7970. That's the phone number here on WMAY with Springfield's Morning News. And just to kind of flash back a bit while we anticipate your phone calls here on WMAY. Again, 217-629-7970. That's the phone number. Back in February 28th of 2020, you had the state officials essentially saying that COVID-19 was here in Illinois, but remained low risk to the public.
The risk of infection to Illinoisans is low. However, we have to plan and prepare for all possibilities. Please be confident that the Illinois Department of Public Health will communicate quickly and transparently if there are any changes in the risk level here in Illinois. In terms of the severity of the disease in the U.S. and Illinois, it is important to note that to date, every person in the U.S. that has contracted the virus has made a recovery, a full recovery.
And again, that's Dr. Ngozi Ezike, the head of the Department of Public Health, back in February of 2020, talking about the severity of COVID-19 and how at that time it wasn't considered a major risk for the public, but things quickly changed just a handful of weeks later with Governor J.B. Pritzker laying out that he was ready to take some pretty swift action to try to limit the spread of COVID-19.
Young and healthy, listen up. We need you to follow social distancing guidelines too. You may only have mild symptoms for a few days and may think that you're just fine, but you can have the unintended tragic effect of spreading COVID-19 to others who may be more vulnerable. And unfortunately, we haven't seen a lot of movement. People aren't understanding that even if you're healthy, even if you're young, that you may be a carrier and you're going to hand it over to somebody else. COVID-19 is spreading because even healthy people can be walking around giving it to other people. So we need to go on lockdown.
I was just going to say, it sounds like then are you going to close bars and restaurants? That is your plan? Or you sort of contradicted yourself there saying you were going to keep the size smaller, but then you're making the case to lock down.
Well, what I'm telling you is that we've been on the trajectory now and planning for each of these steps because it's not easy. You can imagine each one of these decisions has consequences to them that are not just about the pandemic. They're also about people's livelihoods. So we're actually looking hard at that decision making.
And Governor Pritzker at that time did ultimately make that decision to limit restaurants who have in-person service. And I'm asking you now at 217-629-7970. Again, 217-629-7970. What do you think was the most over-the-top COVID-19 policy? Somebody on the YouTube chat saying that the mandatory vaccines to keep your jobs. All right, that was obviously one very contentious policy that President Joe Biden tried to implement, but the U.S. Supreme Court had to slap that down. So let's get your calls at 217-629-7970. That's the phone number here on WMAY. We'll get the phone calls lined up here. Good morning. You're on WMAY. What do you think is the most absurd policy that was enacted during the COVID-19 pandemic? Good morning.
Is it me? Because your phone sounds really bad this morning.
You're on the air. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Greg, I would say, unfortunately, I think you got to redo that question because I would say all of them, but really it's the ridiculousness of that you couldn't go to church, but you could go and get your booze, your pot, and gamble. Come on. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, those were some of the policies that you even saw the courts have to get involved, and the courts even at some points they sided with these policies, saying that it was an emergency. But then you had schools that were closed. You had the number of people that could be in one area being limited by executive order. And again, all of this was done by executive order. I think personally, one of the things that I thought was most absurd was the issue of how many people could be on a boat. If you remember that, how many people could be on a boat? That was one of the policies that were set forth. Limiting people from having more than, say, one or two people on a boat, which I don't know how, especially outside, how that was, even allowed to continue forward, but it was through executive order that Governor J.B. Pritzker made that happen. Let's get to more of your calls. What do you think, as we got COVID-19 now coming to a close, what are the most ridiculous COVID policies you saw enacted? Good morning.
Hey, good morning. I would say the preventative measures that didn't make sense and weren't backed by any studies, like the face diapers. Wear this cloth face diaper, you're going to kill your neighbor. It was ridiculous. If it's airborne, that face shield and the protective glass, the virus isn't all of a sudden going to stop, because of your face diaper. The second part with the experimental vaccine, how the government forced experimental vaccines on the public and said that if you don't take this, you can't travel, you can't go to church, you can't do this, you can't shop, here's your vaccine passport, you're not even going to be able to keep your job. That is ridiculous and against everything this country stands for. So that was ridiculous on that face right there. And then people, the one that blew me away is when everybody was dealing with the same sort of trauma and people lost their loved ones, and you had certain people using it saying that if you were unvaccinated, you killed my vaccinated loved one. That blew me away out of all of it. I never seen so much ugliness out of our culture and our fellow humans. Thanks for taking the call, Greg.
Absolutely. And a lot of the questions about that policy of, hey, if you're vaccinated, you're not going to spread it. Obviously, that was not true. And you had even the president of the United States saying this is a pandemic of the unvaccinated. Again, something that did not pan out to be true. But some of the most damaging, I think, policies that were enacted were things that kept family members from seeing their loved ones in the hospital. Or not allowing for loved ones to go with people for cancer treatments even. So these were obviously some really harsh policies that were handed down because it was unknown what this virus entailed and just how deadly the virus was. But even all throughout the pandemic, the survival rate was 99.06% or something to that effect. So obviously, I think there's going to be a lot of reflection on how we react to a virus that may or may not have come out of a lab out of China. 217-629-7970. Good morning. You're on WMAY.
Well, I have a good one for you. I frequent Stewart Park, Dog Park, a lot. And during COVID, they chained up the dog parks to punish the dogs, I guess. So we just brought our lawn chairs and sat outside of the gated area and let our dogs run around and enjoy themselves.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
So no more punishing the dogs.
Yeah, it wasn't just the dogs. It was the kids as well. They were putting up all kinds of tape around parks and playgrounds, telling kids that they couldn't go and have outdoor activity when children were the least susceptible to having negative impacts from COVID-19. So we're asking you at 217-629-7970, what do you think are some of the most absurd COVID-19 policies from the past 3 years, as apparently the pandemic is practically over? Good morning. You're on WMAY.
I guess I just wanted to comment on, the fact that, everybody, it was supposed to be a deadly virus that was killing everybody's loved ones, yet it wasn't deadly enough to where, everybody wanted to go to the bars. Everybody wanted to still go hang out. I tell you what, if it was a really deadly thing that everybody was really actually afraid of, they would not be in those areas and thinking that some silly little paper mask separating them and 8,000 people shoulder to shoulder at an event is going to save them. But yeah, I just wanted to, it's just like if people were really, really concerned about it and it was actually as bad as they said, then there would be no one anywhere by choice. But that kind of shows how quickly people, just go along with whatever's being told to them in a mass way. But it really brought out all the Karens of society. I think it really exposed, who will all, hook, line, and sinker go and enforce public policy on their fellow man, by pointing them out. We went to Disney, and that was the worst, where you had, 15-year-olds screaming at adults to put on their masks and, stuff like that. So there's so much ridiculous stuff. Yeah, I saw a lot. We all did.
Yeah, I appreciate the call. 217-629-7970 is the phone number. Getting your thoughts on what you think are some of the most ridiculous COVID-19 policies that were implemented through executive order. One that some people maybe think is not ridiculous, that's going to be lifted here soon, is Title 42, having the border policy of being able to turn somebody around because of the pandemic. That's going to lift here with the lifting of the COVID emergency May 11th, and some big questions there. But really, just looking back at all of the different things that were done with COVID-19 and the policies put in place, the masking policies, the stay-at-home orders in itself were, a lot of people had lost their jobs, and the spike of unemployment was through the roof in a state like Illinois. But let's get more of your thoughts. Good morning. You're on WMAY.
Good morning. And then I would see the signs on people's property that said, "Stay home, save lives." And I thought, okay, we as a society, everybody has a gift. Everybody needs one another. And if everybody stayed home, that's not a way to save lives, okay? And then because you have people you need people like ambulance, police, you have to go to the grocery store, things like that. So everybody is essential in my idea. And the other thing is the virus had a 99% survival rate. Yes, there were some people who died, people with compromised immune systems, et cetera.
And every life lost is a tragedy.
Right. But the vast majority did not die from the virus. And what about this 2 weeks to flatten the curve?
Well, that turned into a month and a half or so to flatten the curve here in Illinois, while other states said they're not going to play that game. I think South Dakota is one of those that didn't ever go into lockdown, and their economy is thriving. Florida ended their lockdown procedures weeks afterwards, and they ended up thriving. Illinois stretched it out as long as it could, and Governor J.B. Pritzker still has executive orders in place until May 11th, and that's, again, more than 3.5 years or so of consecutive executive orders. One last call, your thoughts on the most wild COVID-19 policies from the past 3 years, as COVID-19 apparently is no longer a global pandemic. Good morning.
Good morning. What it really did is it really unmasked the people without common sense. I mean, you said it earlier, you take a boat to a lake. I can put 7 adults in my Chevy Suburban, and I could drag a pontoon boat all the way to Shelbyville, but I guess only 3 people get to get out and get on the boat.
Yeah, that was one of the ones where a lot of people were scratching their heads like, what kind of sense does that make? And even the taping up of playgrounds and telling kids you can't go to the playground, what sense does that make? The stay-at-home orders, the vaccine mandates, the mask mandates, the telling people they couldn't go to church, telling people you couldn't be in a crowd of more than 10 people. How that violated the First Amendment is a question I think we're going to have to reflect on moving forward. Got to take a break. It is Springfield's Morning News on WMAY. We may be able to get a few more calls on the other side.